All right, welcome back. This is CSIS 2200. This is chapter number 7, and we're talking about the MIS course. Part number 2, we left off with talking about the internet connection, so we'll pick up there. So how do you connect to the internet? And there's different methods how to connect. Historically, we used something called a dial-up modem, and this was a device that would basically couple up with a traditional telephone back in even the 70s, where it was a rotary dial, and the modem, the word modem just means to modulate and demodulate an analog signal to a digital signal, and then vice versa. Then what happened was they came up with connecting the internet through the TV, which was our cable TV, and it provided a far greater what they called the bandwidth of the internet connection. So the cable TV, and they still use that. The cable TV is still used by Shaw and other internet service providers that are out there. Now TELUS, they use a slightly different technology with telephones, and they said, well, we don't want to use the dial-up, because the dial-up was just a single, very thin copper line, but we had these multiple copper lines, and so they created this digital subscribers line, and TELUS, I believe, still uses this to the houses, and then from the houses they're connected to fiber optic. So they had different iterations of this, asynchronous or asymmetric and symmetric digital subscriber lines. These were just slightly different technologies and a little bit faster or slower. Very high speed ones. These were all just different bandwidths that you could buy at the time. I think one that's missing here would definitely be fiber optic. I don't know why I don't have that on my slide, but fiber optic is what I use, which was put in into Vancouver in the downtown area in 1986. They put in fiber optic lines for high-speed telephone communications. This was even a precursor to the internet. So they knew that there was, this technology was being developed. So Vancouver, during Expo 86, installed fiber optics in the downtown area, a small portion of it, and we had extremely high connection, and we were able to connect that to the backbone. So downtown Vancouver has a very low-cost, high-speed fiber optic connection. All right, let's move on to the next learning objective, which is navigation tools on the internet. People are very well versed at this because we do this every day. We use search engines. I think most people use Google, but there are a lot of other search engines out there. So I just wanted to highlight another one called DuckDuckGo. You might or might not have heard of DuckDuckGo. This particular search engine, you can access it through Google. Just type in duckduckgo.com. And if you look at the Uniform Resource Locator, you can see here that there is actually more information. This is part of the URI, which allows you to extend just the location of it into the information of the website as well. So if you look at this information up here, it's asking a query or question that's asking for a search term of douglascollege.ca. You can see that I put that in my DuckDuckGo search here, and I also there's some other concatenated information to look onto the web. So they've added that on my behalf. I didn't have to type that out. Now DuckDuckGo is a search engine very similar to Google, but what their selling feature is that they don't want to sell your information. It basically, when I type in this information here, it remains anonymous, supposedly. Now you can get something similar to this feature if you use Google's incognito mode. So if I open up another browser, up in the right hand corner here, I go to incognito mode. It shows me that I'm kind of like a spy here with my glasses, and nobody knows really who I am. This is blocking third-party cookies, and it's protecting you somewhat. Now there's some nuances between this particular browser and DuckDuckGo. I haven't really researched that into any depth. I don't use DuckDuckGo myself very much. I just find that the searching algorithms in it don't render what I want most of the time, so I tend to shy away from it. In this case, douglascollege.ca pops up right away, so that's good. But basically what the difference is that when I click on it, Google doesn't know that I'm going to Douglas, or they're not trying to advertise or sell me something to that. So that's kind of their feature of the search engine. Now, all search engines kind of follow a similar method of locating websites. What they do is the search engines will start to try to locate servers. Now, how do they do that? Well, as I explained earlier, the IP addresses, there's only a fixed number of them. There's like 4.1 billion of them. And so what they do is they ping the first number in the sequence, and they basically say, are you a server? And if it says no, then it goes to the next number. If it finds a server, then it basically looks at the server, goes onto their server, and starts combing all of their data for keywords. And that's one of the algorithms that they use for searching the internet. Now, Google has a very complex way of searching the net and figuring out the best way to find you and where you want to go. And that's why Google really won the search engine race. 15, 20 years ago, there was a lot of search engines out there. In fact, Yahoo.com was the number one search engine for a long time until Google came out with a better algorithm. So if you think about it, it's just a program on keywords that created one of the largest companies on the planet. And it was all based on that algorithm that they came up with. Now, people are trying to figure out what that algorithm is, and they use something called search engine optimization. This is a completely unique field, a discipline that people work in to help companies become located on the web. And Google actually now provides this service because they're selling their own service to companies. If you want your company to come up in people's searches, you can pay them, and they will change their algorithm so that when people search, let's say I'm typing in like I'm looking for a car, they will put your car company at the top of the list. So this is a very complicated, sophisticated area, and what you have to do to get your company high up on the list. I know a couple guys that do this as a career. They work from home. They have clients of companies, and all they do is they work on getting that company higher up in the Google search list. And if they do, they get paid more. So they have all these tricks on how to do that. And that's a whole discipline called search engine optimization. I put a link here to a YouTube video if you're interested. It's kind of fascinating how it works, but it is a very complicated discipline if you want to pursue it as a career. Now, navigational tools, they all start with the browser. So browsers are a software program. They call them universal clients. These are programs that are able to connect to primarily web pages, but they're also able to connect to other types of protocols like files, to transfer files, to do emails, to do other things. So all of them share a commonality of what they can do, but each particular graphical web browser has its own nuances of what they do for their customer. And there's always a browser war, and whoever has the browser controls the client, and whoever controls the client is the customer that really makes the money. So if you ever go to Google, you'll notice on Google's homepage, all they have is primarily just a nice relaxing cartoon to look at, something fresh every day, in a search box. Very simple, very easy, and as soon as you type it in, they've captured you. Now, if you take a look at Microsoft, Internet Explorer or Edge or Firefox, they always kind of force you into the Microsoft world, and they put up their news, and there's all sorts of stuff to monetize it. And I think customers I know I don't like that. I don't like to be forced, to watch certain things or look at certain things. That's why I've kind of gravitated to Google Chrome, and I'm really surprised that these other search engines haven't learned that lesson. I haven't used an Apple Safari myself. I've used Opera a little bit. It has its feature is that it kind of works in incognito mode. So Chrome has kind of dominated this industry, and because of their search engine capabilities, their browser works with it. People tend to use it all the time. Now, saying that, there still are problems. For example, I run a server for Douglas College. It's a server that controls all of the course curriculum at the college, and Chrome doesn't work with it. Because it's a fairly proprietary system, it only works with Internet Explorer and Firefox, Mozilla's Firefox. Currently, it works with Safari as well, but it doesn't work with Chrome. It doesn't work with Edge. It doesn't work with Opera. So sometimes, and this is my tip here, my tip for you guys, if you're trying to connect to something and it's not working, it can even work partly, but it may not work for a certain part. And I'll give you another example. At Douglas College, we have an academic integrity educational module. Some of you might have taken this module. If you've just come to Douglas College, you probably might remember that. If you run it in Chrome, it doesn't work because of the way that the graphics were embedded in it. It doesn't work unless you go into incognito mode or you shut down your ad blocker. If you run it in Safari, it seems to work because Safari isn't set up with those restrictions. So it depends on the browser that you're using with some web pages. So I've had this problem because I've got 3,500 students in the first semester that are going through that module, and I'm the supervising faculty for that module, and I get emails. I've literally got hundreds of emails that it doesn't work, so I have to send them notices to say that the browser that they're using isn't compatible. Try another browser or reconfigure their Google Chrome browser. So my point here is that there's all sorts of nuances, and it's probably a good idea to have at least two, or I have 3 browsers on my computer at any one time. Now, all these share commonalities. They all have sort of menu options. You can browse your history. You can view your history. You can save sites that you like. You can set your own personal preferences, which is good. The navigation buttons to move around. They all share those commonalities between all the browsers. Now, what these companies do is they consistently crawl the web, and these web crawler or bots that go out there and they search all of these different websites, and they're constantly crawlers or spiders or bots. They're used these little programs that go out there and keep pinging IP addresses to see if there's a server. If there is, go onto the web server and download everything they can in a text form so that they can build their search engine algorithms. So they constantly have to be doing this because there's new content coming out all the time. A lot of websites, when you develop it and you post it online, you have an option to submit to a search engine. So you can volunteer your site to a search engine so that people can find you. If they don't, it can take up to 30 days for search engines to find your site and propagate their search engine data. They're primarily used to gather data and send it back to the search engine, and that helps feed their algorithm to make their search engines more dynamic. They use a term called indexing, which helps locate information. You know, if you want to find something in a textbook, you go to the index, you can go through the list, and then you can find out maybe where it could be located. Similar to search engines, they work the same way. They call it indexing. Now, this is kind of how the algorithm of these search engines work with indexing. So they'll go onto a website, they'll look for a word, and if that word pops up multiple times, the index rating gets higher and higher. That way, in the future, if somebody on their search engine types in that same search word, it looks up the index and it tries to correlate that with other websites to find the top indexed website with that term in it, and then it lists them accordingly down the search engine. So as you scroll through your search requests, it comes up with the most probable one at the very top and the least probable one as you progress through the list of all the searches. So that keyword that you typed in has that index or that number that links those web pages to that keyword. That's, in a nutshell, that's kind of how it works. But again, search engine optimization is really how that algorithm and how the search engines organize their links. So it's there's a lot to this. This is a whole study. You can take a whole course on search engine optimization. And as I said, when you're making a search, the search engine has correlated these numbers with certain words, and they put them in order during this indexing process when you're looking stuff up and you do a search request. I thought this was a good one. It varies in intelligence. Well, you know, many times I've done a search and it's almost spooky when I type something in, how it pops something up that I actually want. There's almost like an artificial intelligence in the search engines, and that is coming. I know Google is working on this a lot with their AI and their quantum computing. So what we're going to see in the near future, I think this will be one of the first user features of artificial intelligence combined with quantum computing, is in the search engine request, because this is done so much, so often, and is so important that people find and get directed to the right location. And Google can monetize this, so they're heavily motivated to do that. But one more thing about that is it does vary, because different search engines have different AIs that perform this. So based on how intelligent they are is really where customers will gravitate. And currently that's Google. Google has the lead right now. Whether they'll hold the lead, we don't know. But currently they are the leaders right now. All right, let's move on to internet services. These are different things the internet can do for us. And if I asked you, what does the internet do for you? You say, well, I can look up information I'm looking for. I can watch movies. I can talk to people online. I can do social media. I can what have you. There's all sorts of services that the internet provides. So is that possible? Well, it's made possible by the Transport Component Protocol suite of protocols. So this is a top level protocol that allows you to communicate essentially through the internet. As we mentioned before, the key one is the Internet Protocol, which is allows you to communicate with basic fundamental things like the email. And the email was actually the critical app. It was the app that went viral, that really launched the internet. Without email, I don't know if the internet would have been driven as hard and as fast as it was, because it was that got most people hooked to the internet. We were able to communicate in an asynchronous way, which people liked, where we didn't have to rely on a paper letter anymore. We could do it electronically on our computer. The other subset of that protocol would be a simple messaging protocol, or simple mail transfer protocol. I've heard it, but messaging protocol. And the reason they call it messaging is because it's a one-way stream. It's a lot of spammers. You might have been, we've all been receiving spam, and they use a simple messaging protocol to basically broadcast out a message to everybody. And it doesn't mean that you can call them back. A lot of times you'll see these emails that say, do not reply. If you see an email that says do not reply, that was coming from an SMTP server that was broadcasting a message just to give you a message, but not to respond. So hence it's a message, it's not a communication. All right, so here's what the URL would look like, which would be the protocol, and then right here it'd be your domain, and then there's a colon. You can also put in a password and some kind of email. Oh, sorry, this is the email address, colon the password. So within the protocol, you can type in your email address and your password. Think about how unsecure that is. There's no security on this protocol. And it can go in to a particular domain, like let's say gmail.com, and through a particular port. Now, 8080 is the HTML port, and 5087 is the SMTP port. So this gets a little complicated and technical. If you're in the 1280 course, you'd probably learn a lot more about the details of that. Now, here's another protocol as a subset of the TCP/IP, is the Post Office Protocol. A lot of us use that. We use POP3. We also use this IMAP, this Internet Messaging Access Protocol. Both of these are dynamic back and forth protocols that allow for more than just emailing information. So there's popular services. There's a lot of popular internet services. Email, of course, being the number one. They used to have something called news groups. This isn't used as much anymore. Discussion groups. Again, this was a precursor to the social media. And then internet relay chat was another old one. This was, again, precursor to the social media. Instant messaging, again, social, and just another type of social media type. And then internet telephone, or voice over internet protocol, which is allowing us to talk. So if you look at all of these protocols, all these services, a lot of these are social media or popular services. And these are the older versions that were out there that are not used as much anymore. So looking at it a little closer, email being probably the most commonly used service the internet uses globally. It's the most widely used service on the internet. Its main types are a web-based email and a client-based. So what's the difference? If I was to go to a web browser, like let's say Chrome, and I type in something like gmail.com, I would have a web-based email. And if I was to download, let's say something like a program called Microsoft Outlook. Microsoft Outlook is a proprietary client by Microsoft to connect to email servers. That would be a client-based email. So there's email programs. They afford us additional features like folders to organize our emails, to keep better track of it, keep track of our friends, our contacts, distribution lists, checks our spelling, delivers our notifications, it follows up. So emails definitely have more features. This would be an example of IMAP or POP3 email servers. This would not be an example of SMTP, for example. But there are two different types, the web-based and the client-based. Some of you might have Outlook client loaded on your computer, and I think Macintosh has theirs as well. But some of you just might go into Chrome and just open up gmail.com and go directly to the web-based one. Sometimes I have my client might not work or might be down or broken. I'll go to my web-based as a backup. Now, discussion groups are an older type of platform or service that the internet provided. This was a place where people could connect and have a particular focus of topic and discuss that topic. So it could be political discussion, it could be hobbies, it could be sports, it could be whatever that particular discussion group was created. Now, there was literally hundreds, if not thousands, of discussion groups that were built on the internet. A lot of these were kind of had a dark side to them, and a lot of them have been disbanded. Not many people I know use this anymore. There's other forms to do that. It was a way to meet people. I put a link here on a particular discussion group just as a sample of one. Discussion groups came out of the early pre-internet, were called BBS, which was bulletin board services, where people would use telephones to dial into a particular computer, and people would get together on computers and discuss. I mean, you can imagine this was a lot of geeky, nerdy kind of people, which isn't a bad thing, but they would talk about things like Dungeons and Dragons and those kinds of things. So now you can imagine with something like Twitter has completely dominated this industry. So Twitter has basically eliminated the discussion groups, because you can create discussion groups in Twitter and dynamically connect to everybody on the world. News groups are kind of the similar type of thing. This was a precursor to all these news networks that are out now. And, this again has been taken over. Google used to have something called groups.google.com. The subdomain was called groups. It was a very specific subdomain of Google's main domain. And I don't even believe that's even up and running anymore. Let me have a quick look here. No, it doesn't look like it's working anymore. So that technology has basically been taken over. All right, so that I'm going to stop it at this point because we're hitting the 23-minute mark, and I will see you guys in part number 3.